My mother handed me her phone and said, "Nora, take the picture." I looked at the 40 relatives gathering beneath the cedar arch behind her. My brother Trevor stood beside Dad. My sister Tessa was in the middle flashing her engagement ring. There was room for everybody, except me. Aunt Colleen laughed and said Nora's better behind the camera anyway. She was never exactly the photogenic one. 3 cousins laughed. My sister did too. My mother heard every word. She still handed me the phone. Then a woman standing beside Aunt Colleen looked at me and said quietly, "Actually, I think Nora should be in the picture." Colleen waved her off. "Oh, don't worry about her. She's used to it." The woman's expression changed. She reached into her purse, pulled out a business card, and handed it to my aunt. Then she said the sentence that wiped the smile off half my family's faces. "Actually, I'm here because of Nora." My aunt frowned. The woman continued, "She owns Cedar Hollow." My mother's phone nearly slipped out of my hand. But that wasn't the moment my family finally understood who I was. That came later, after my brother publicly announced he was renovating my property without permission. After my sister posted my lodge online as her new wedding venue. After my father stood in front of 60 relatives and volunteered my money to rescue both of them. And after the people who had called me plain, difficult, jealous, and forgettable discovered that they had already been using my name to solve a problem none of them had bothered to tell me about. My name is Nora Bennett. I was 34 years old when I finally learned that saying no to your family does not make you selfish. Sometimes it is the first honest thing anyone in the family has done. Growing up outside Columbus, Ohio, I belonged to one of those families that looked close in photographs. Matching Christmas sweaters, Sunday brunch, summer cookouts, graduation pictures. My mother Denise owned a neighborhood hair salon called Magnolia House. My father Gary had spent most of his career in sales for a regional building supply company. We were not wealthy. We were comfortable. But my parents cared far more about looking successful than actually feeling secure. Dad wanted people to know his son was ambitious. Mom wanted people to know her daughter was beautiful. And they both wanted people to believe we were a family where everyone adored one another. That required editing. Every family story needs someone left out of the frame. In ours, that was me. My older brother Trevor was the smart one. He had been given that title before he was old enough to understand what it meant. At 11, he bought baseball cards at garage sales and resold them to kids at school. Dad talked about it for years. Our businessman, our entrepreneur. That kid understands money. By high school, Trevor could barely change the oil in his car without Dad telling a neighbor it proved he was mechanically gifted. My younger sister Tessa was the pretty one. Tessa really was beautiful. Blue blonde hair, blue eyes, the kind of effortless smile strangers remembered. There was nothing wrong with that. The problem was what my family needed her beauty to mean about me. I was not ugly. I know that now. I was simply not Tessa. But in my family, difference became hierarchy. When we were little, Mom would stand us in front of the hallway mirror before church. She would brush Tessa's hair and say, "That face is going to get you into trouble one day." Then she would look at me. "You have such a strong face, Nora." I was 8 the first time she said it. By 12, I understood. Strong face, interesting face, practical haircut, great personality. All the little phrases adults use when they have silently decided a girl is not pretty. Mom also arranged every family photograph. Tessa went in front. Trevor stood beside Dad. I was usually told I was tall enough for the back. Once when I was 12, Mom stepped away from the camera, studied us, and said, "Let's put our photogenic people where the light is better." Everyone laughed. I did too. Children learn quickly which humiliations are safest to laugh at. Dad's version was different. I did not care much about appearance. I cared about usefulness. Trevor was useful because he could carry the Bennett name forward. Tessa was useful because people admired her. I was useful because I did not need much. That became my role. The easy child. The independent child. The child who would figure it out. If Trevor was struggling, Dad stepped in. If Tessa was upset, Mom rearranged the household. If I had a problem, my parents complimented my maturity. It took me years to understand that sometimes adults praise a child for being independent because admitting that child needed them would require effort. I learned to make things. I liked floor plans, old houses, cabinets, tile, the strange satisfaction of making a crooked room square again. I could spend an entire Saturday in the garage taking apart an old dresser and forget to eat lunch. At 15, I rebuilt the shelves in our garage because Dad kept complaining about them. He looked at the finished shelves and said, "Not bad, kiddo." I carried those 3 words for months. A week later, Trevor got a B+ in economics. Dad took him to a steakhouse. That was the Bennett system. Praise Trevor. Admire Tessa. Depend on Nora. When I was 17, I won a statewide drafting competition. My model was displayed at a student banquet downtown. Other parents showed up early with cameras. Mine arrived 40 minutes late. Tessa had a hair appointment. Dad looked at the model I had spent 3 months building. Nice. That was all. On the ride home, he spent 20 minutes asking Trevor about a summer sales internship. I remember staring out the car window and promising myself that someday I would build something so large they would have to notice. That promise carried me much further than it should have. I got into a respected architecture program. My parents told me tuition was unrealistic. Dad said community college was perfectly respectable for a practical girl. 3 weeks later, they helped Tessa buy a brand new Jeep because she needed something reliable. Trevor had his rent covered through college. I worked. First at a tile showroom, then at a cabinet warehouse, then evenings for a small design-build company. I took drafting classes, learned estimating, learned CAD, learned how projects actually went wrong, water behind tile, rot under windows, contractors who disappeared, clients who changed their minds halfway through a job. I learned that design was the easy part. Trust was the real business. At 25, I started Northline Home and Design from the corner of my apartment. $6,000 in savings, a second-hand laptop, one unreliable printer, and a borrowed folding table. My first project was a downstairs bathroom for a retired teacher. My second was a mudroom. My third nearly destroyed me because a subcontractor installed a shower pan incorrectly and water leaked into the ceiling below. I had barely enough cash to fix it. I fixed it anyway. Because my name was on the invoice, Northline grew slowly, then steadily. Bathrooms became kitchens. Kitchens became full houses. We built a specialty team for older homeowners who wanted to stay safely in their houses. Then historical restoration. Then storm damage. Then small commercial properties. I hired carefully, reinvested constantly, kept my old Subaru because it ran, opened a second office, then a third. By 34, Northline employed more than 70 people. My family thought I did something with kitchens. I had tried telling them. They simply weren't interested. At Christmas 2 years earlier, I said, "We just signed the lease on our Cincinnati office." Mom interrupted me halfway through the sentence. "Tessa, did you ever decide between peonies and garden roses?" Nobody returned to my announcement. So eventually I stopped making them. That is important. I never created some elaborate secret life to punish my family. I simply stopped correcting people who were committed to misunderstanding me. Which brings me to Cedar Hollow. I first saw the lodge 2 years before the reunion. It sat outside Traverse City, Michigan, on a long stretch of lakefront shaded by cedar, maple, and pine. Nothing about it was flashy. That was why I loved it. 12 weathered guest cabins, a stone fireplace in the main lodge, an old barn used for weddings, a dock where generations of children had learned to swim, wooden picnic tables covered in initials carved decades earlier. It felt like a place where real memories had happened. Northline was originally hired after a winter pipe burst inside one of the cabins. That repair became a second project, then another. The owner, Claire Morgan, had run Cedar Hollow with her late husband for almost 30 years. After he died, she kept going, but she was tired. Over time, Claire and I became friends. She knew the names of families who had visited every summer for 20 years. She knew which cabin had the best sunrise. She knew where her husband had repaired the dock after a storm in 1999. When she finally told me she was considering selling, developers were already circling. One wanted luxury condos. Another wanted to demolish half the cabins and build modern villas. Claire hated both ideas. So did I. Northline had been looking for a property where we could create a training program while still operating a real hospitality business. Cedar Hollow made sense, financially, professionally, and yes, emotionally. We spent almost a year working through the details. 6 weeks before the Bennett reunion, Cedar Hollow became mine. My father had already suggested the property for our reunion after seeing it online. I told Claire to keep the reservation. I also quietly covered the additional cabins when Dad underestimated how many relatives were coming. I did not tell my family I owned the place, not because I planned some dramatic reveal. The opposite. I wanted one weekend where I did not arrive as a title. I did not want to be CEO Nora, property owner Nora, successful Nora. I wanted to find out whether my family could simply treat me kindly. It took less than an hour to get my answer. The reunion started Saturday afternoon. Kids ran between cabins. Uncles gathered around the grills. My mother moved through the lawn in a white linen dress, behaving as though she personally owned Michigan. Dad stood near the drink table, bragging about Trevor. Business is exploding. Biggest year yet. He's got crews all over Columbus. Trevor owned Bennett Premier Renovations. He had started the business 4 years earlier. Unlike me, Trevor talked about every success, sometimes before it happened. His social media was full of perfect kitchens, branded trucks, clean work boots, and captions about hustle. Dad loved it. Tessa had an audience too. She was 31 and engaged to Owen Parker, a physical therapist from Grand Rapids. Owen came from a stable family. His parents had done well. Not private jet well. More like college, paid for lake house weekends, nobody panics when the furnace breaks well. To Mom, this was practically aristocracy. Tessa's wedding had become my mother's full-time emotional occupation. 200 guests, a renovated horse farm, live band, custom florals, specialty cocktails, a champagne wall. Mom said champagne wall so often I began wondering whether she was marrying it. When I arrived in my old Subaru, Tessa looked at the car and laughed. You still have that? It still runs. So does a lawnmower. Mom smiled. Not at me, at Tessa. The smile said, be nice. But also, that was funny. 20 minutes later came the family photograph. Mom gathered everyone near a cedar arch overlooking the lake. She placed Tessa and Owen in the center. Trevor beside Dad. Cousins, aunts, uncles, children. I walked toward them. Mom looked around, then held out her phone. Nora, take the picture. I stopped. You don't want me in it. Mom looked genuinely confused by the question. Of course we do. Then she looked at the group. We just need someone to take it. One of my teenage cousins said, I can. Mom waved him off. No, sweetheart, stay with your mother. Then Aunt Colleen laughed. Nora's better behind the camera anyway. Several people smiled. Colleen continued. She was never exactly the photogenic Bennett. Tessa laughed. Not loudly. Just one quick burst. But I heard it. Mom heard it too. Our eyes met. For 1 second I waited. 34 years old. Successful. Independent. Owner of the ground beneath our feet. And some tiny, stupid part of me still waited for my mother to say, Colleen, enough. She didn't. She handed me the phone. Then Claire, who had been standing near Aunt Colleen, said, I think Nora belongs in the picture. Colleen turned toward her. Oh, don't worry about Nora. She gave my shoulder a little pat. She's used to being our odd one out. Claire's face became very still. Aunt Colleen apparently mistook that for curiosity. This is Nora, she said. Tessa got the looks. She pointed toward my brother. Trevor got the brains. Then toward me. Nora got determination. Someone chuckled. Colleen leaned closer to Claire. She does some remodeling thing. Kitchens, bathrooms, that sort of thing. Then because she could never leave a wound alone, still single too. I kept holding my mother's phone. Claire looked at me, then at Colleen. She reached into her bag, pulled out a business card, handed it over. Colleen read it. Claire Morgan, founder, Cedar Hollow Lodge advisor, Northline Home and Design. My aunt frowned. You own this place. Claire smiled. I did. Did, for 28 years. Colleen glanced toward the lodge. I thought you were management. I was everything for a while. Claire looked at me. Now I'm mostly trying to learn how to retire. My aunt laughed politely. Then Claire said, Nora bought Cedar Hollow from me 6 weeks ago. Colleen's smile disappeared. What? She owns it. My mother's phone felt suddenly very heavy in my hand. People nearby turned. Trevor stopped talking. Dad looked over. Tessa lowered her drink. Colleen stared at me. I bought this place. Yes. With your company. Yes. My aunt looked almost offended. But how? I couldn't resist. With money mostly. One cousin snorted. Claire smiled. Then Mom came toward us. Dad and Trevor followed. What's happening? Mom asked. Colleen pointed at me. She owns Cedar Hollow. My mother stared. What? Claire introduced herself. Dad frowned. You sold the lodge to Nora. Yes. Trevor laughed. Not because anything was funny, because disbelief was safer. What Northline bought a summer camp. Claire looked at him. You know Northline? Sure, Nora's remodeling company. Claire's eyes moved to me, then back to my family. You really don't know what she does. Nobody answered. Claire continued. Northline has more than 70 employees. My mother's face changed. They operate across 3 states. Dad stopped smiling. They do residential renovation, historic restoration, accessibility, remodeling, and disaster repair. Trevor's expression tightened. Claire added, they currently have a waiting list extending into next spring. Silence. Mom looked at me. 70 employees. A little more now. Dad stared at the lodge, then at me. How much did this cost? There it was. Not congratulations. Not are you happy. Not tell me about it. How much? I smiled. Enough. Trevor crossed his arms. You financed it. Claire's eyes narrowed. I answered before she could. Trevor. What? I just learned your sister didn't insult my career for 5 minutes before asking about financing. His cheeks colored. I'm asking a normal question. No, you're checking whether my success counts. A couple of cousins went quiet. Dad stepped forward. All right. His voice had that familiar authority in it. Everybody take a breath. Then he put one arm around my shoulder. I moved away before he could pull me close. His arm hung there. Awkward. For the first time, I saw embarrassment cross his face. He recovered instantly. Well, this is wonderful. He raised his voice for everyone. Our Nora has apparently been holding out on us. Holding out. As though my success belonged to the family, and I had hidden communal property. Dad laughed. Looks like all 3 Bennett kids are doing pretty well. There it was. The rewrite had begun already. Trevor the businessman. Tessa the beautiful bride. And now Nora, another Bennett success story. I looked at him. Northline has been doing well for years. He smiled tightly. Well, now we know. I handed Mom her phone. We still taking the picture. Nobody said anything. Mom looked at the group, then at me. Of course. I stepped toward them. Before I reached the arch, Dad said, Nora, why don't you stand next to Trevor? It should not have mattered, but it did. 34 years old. And for 1 second, moving from behind the camera into the photograph felt like a victory. Then I realized something worse. They had not changed because they regretted leaving me out. They changed because they had learned what I owned. That realization stayed with me all afternoon, and my family proved it almost immediately. Within an hour, everyone wanted to know something. Uncle Ray asked about remodeling his basement. A cousin wanted advice about buying rental property. Aunt Colleen suddenly admired my jacket. Mom introduced me to 2 relatives as my daughter Nora, the business owner. Tessa asked whether Northline had ever done celebrity homes. Trevor asked again what I had paid for Cedar Hollow. I refused again. Then I went into the lodge to check on dinner arrangements with Claire. When I came back outside, my phone buzzed. Instagram notification. Trevor had tagged Cedar Hollow. I opened it. There was a photograph of the lodge. Over it in large white letters. Big things coming. Below, Bennett Premier Renovations is excited to partner on the restoration of historic Cedar Hollow Lodge this fall. I stared at the screen. For several seconds, I honestly thought I had misunderstood what I was reading. Then I saw the next slide. Trevor standing in front of the main lodge. His company logo in the corner. Caption: Family business, family legacy. I walked across the lawn. I was speaking to Uncle Ray and 2 cousins. Trevor. I looked at me. Hey. I held up the phone. What is this? I glanced at it. Oh, I was going to talk to you. You announced it first. It's social media. You said Bennett Premier is restoring Cedar Hollow. He smiled. I said we're partnering. We are not. His expression changed. Mom said you 2 talked. We did. Then what's the problem? The answer was no. He laughed. I figured you were emotional. That sentence did something to me. Not rage. Clarity. You figured my answer didn't count. Trevor sighed. Nora. No, explain it. He lowered his voice. You own the property. Yes. I own a construction company. Yes. We're family. Yes. So why would you bring in outsiders? I stared at him. My employees are not outsiders. You know what I mean. No, I know exactly what you mean. His smile disappeared. You think because your name is on Cedar Hollow you know construction better than I do. I have run a construction and design company for 9 years. Design. There it is. What? You still need me to be doing something smaller than you. Trevor scoffed. That's not true. You just publicly announced your company is taking over my project after I said no. I'm trying to help you. No. I handed the phone toward him. You are trying to use my project to help yourself. His eyes hardened. Watch it. Take the post down. Nora. Now. A few relatives nearby had gone silent. Trevor glanced at them. His pride kicked in. Fine. He pulled out his phone. Deleted the stories. Then he smiled coldly. You'll regret being stubborn. I looked at him. Maybe. Then I walked away. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Tessa. Not a message. Another tag. She had posted a picture of Cedar Hollow's wedding barn. White heart emojis. A ring emoji. Text. Wait, did we just find our real wedding venue? Below it. Family property makes everything more special. I closed my eyes. Not because I was surprised, because the pattern had become almost comical. I found Tessa near the dock showing the post to two cousins. Tessa, she smiled. Isn't it gorgeous? Take it down. Her smile vanished. What? You posted Cedar Hollow as your wedding venue. I said maybe. You said family property. It is. No, she laughed. You own it. Yes. And you're my sister. Yes. So it is not family property. Her face tightened. God, Nora. What? You're already acting weird about this place. Weird. The family word. What did I do? You're being territorial. It's my business. Exactly. She rolled her eyes. You own a wedding venue and I'm getting married. Those are two separate facts. One cousin looked down to hide a smile. Tessa saw it. Her cheeks colored. You seriously wouldn't let your own sister get married here? I didn't say that. Then why are you making this a thing? Because you announced it before asking me. It was an Instagram story. Trevor said the same thing. She crossed her arms. Oh my God, are we really doing this? I studied her. Doing what? This whole everybody uses poor Nora thing. There it was. I had not said anything about childhood. She had already reached for it. Tessa, take the post down. She stared at me, then deleted it. Happy. Thank you. She shook her head. You know, sometimes I understand why you're alone. The words were quiet. Only I heard them. She walked away before I could answer. That one hurt. I wish it hadn't, but it did. And the worst part was that she knew it would. By late afternoon, I wanted distance from everyone. I went inside. Claire found me in the kitchen checking the catering list for no reason. You've read that page 4 times. I like chicken quantities. Obviously. I smiled weakly. She studied me. What happened? Trevor announced his company was renovating the lodge. Her eyebrows rose. Tessa announced she was getting married here. Claire blinked. Did you approve either? No. She looked toward the patio. Your family moves fast. They've always been efficient with things that belong to me. Claire did not laugh. That was why I liked her. She knew when a joke was hiding a bruise. Nora, I'm fine. No, you're functional. I looked at her. That's different. I exhaled. Claire leaned against the counter. Do you want them gone? No. You sure? Yes. I looked through the kitchen window. Kids were running barefoot across the lawn. One of my younger cousins was teaching his daughter to skip rocks. This weekend isn't theirs alone. Claire nodded. I don't want to punish 60 people because 5 of them don't understand boundaries. That sounds healthy. Don't sound so disappointed. She smiled. I was hoping to use the eject button. I laughed. For a moment, I felt normal. Then Mom appeared in the doorway. Nora, can we talk? Claire looked at me. I nodded. She left. Mom waited until we were alone. Then her public smile disappeared. What are you doing? I almost laughed. Checking chicken quantities. You know what I mean. No, you embarrassed Trevor. I posted a fake business announcement. I was excited. He lied. He assumed you'd want family involved. I told you no. Mom crossed her arms. You didn't even think about it. I did. For 5 seconds. That was enough. She stared at me. You've always done this. Done what? Turned everything into competition. There it was again. I leaned against the counter. Mom, Trevor posted that he was running my renovation after I said no. I was trying to help. And Tessa posted Cedar Hollow as her wedding venue without asking. She was excited. Notice how every time they ignore my answer, you explain their feelings. Mom frowned. What? Trevor was excited. Tessa was excited. Dad meant well. Aunt Colleen was joking. I looked at her. What do I get? She stared. You're being dramatic. I nodded. There it is. Mom's face tightened. Nora, you're 34. Yes. Why are we still having conversations about whether you felt left out as a child? Because you handed me a phone today and asked me to take a family picture I wasn't in. Her mouth opened, then closed. That wasn't intentional. No. We needed someone to take the picture. My cousin volunteered. He's 16. I can operate a phone. She sighed. I can't do this with you. You never could. Her expression hardened. Your father is embarrassed. Why? Because you made him look foolish. I didn't say anything about him. You let everyone discover that he had no idea what his own daughter did. I didn't. Nora. That's true. Mom lowered her voice. You could have told us. I tried. You did not. I told you about Cincinnati. She looked blank. Exactly. Christmas 2 years ago. Still nothing. I said we opened another office. Then I watched the memory arrive. Mom looked away. Oh, you interrupted me to talk about Tessa's flowers. That was one conversation. It was 30 years of conversations. She crossed her arms tighter. You are determined to see yourself as a victim. I felt something inside me go still. No, I said it quietly. I spent most of my life determined not to. That stopped her. I continued. I worked harder so I wouldn't need you. I stayed quiet so I wouldn't make things worse. I laughed when Colleen insulted me. I let Dad introduce Trevor as the businessman while nobody knew I had 70 employees. I came to every birthday, every Thanksgiving, every Christmas. I kept telling myself family was family. I looked at her. That is not someone desperate to be a victim. Mom's face softened slightly. Then, as always, she moved away from the pain toward something useful. Fine, she exhaled. Let's talk about the future. I knew what was coming. Trevor could really use Cedar Hollow. There it was. Not I needed Trevor. Trevor needed Cedar Hollow. How badly? She hesitated. Nora, how badly does he need it? All businesses have slow periods. Is his company in trouble? He has cash flow issues. How serious? I don't know. That was a lie. Mom knew Trevor's life down to the dollar. But I let it go. She stepped closer. You have a big company. Trevor needs one strong project. You could help him. I stared at her. Mom, I have more than 70 employees. I know. People with mortgages, kids, health insurance, crews that helped me build Northline. Her expression became impatient. What does that have to do with Trevor? Everything. That question told me everything. My renovation work belongs to them. You can spare one project. I'm not taking work away from my company to rescue Trevor's. Her face changed. Rescue. You used the word needs. Hi is your brother. Yes. Family helps family. The slogan. The Bennett commandment. I looked at her. Family also asks. She stared at me. I walked past her. That should have been the end of the conversation. It wasn't. At 6:30, Dad found me alone near the boathouse. No audience this time. That mattered. Nora. I turned. He walked down the path with both hands in his pockets. For a moment, he looked almost gentle. Your mother says you're upset. I'm not upset. You've been snapping at everybody. Trevor announced a project I never gave him. I took it down. Tessa announced a wedding venue she never asked for. She took that down too. Dad shrugged. So the problem is solved? No, he frowned. What do you want? There was that question. But unlike Tessa's later version, Dad wasn't asking because he cared. I wanted the conflict to end on his terms. I want people to stop deciding things for me. Nobody is deciding anything. I looked at him. He sighed. Okay, Trevor jumped the gun. Yes, he's under pressure. So, Dad's expression hardened. So maybe show some grace. Why? He looked genuinely shocked. Because he's your brother. Would he give Northline one of his biggest projects if I was struggling? Dad scoffed. That's different. Why? Because you're established. There it was. My competence had become another reason I owed more. You can absorb it. I looked at him. Dad, what? Do you hear yourself? He crossed his arms. You always make things harder than they need to be. No, I make you say the quiet part out loud. His eyes narrowed. What quiet part? Trevor needs. So Nora gives. He said nothing. Tessa wants. So Nora gives. You need the family picture taken. Nora holds the camera. Dad's mouth tightened. That's childish. Maybe. I stepped closer. But it's accurate. He looked toward the lake. Then his tone changed. Less father, more salesman. Trevor is having a rough quarter. I waited. I had some supplier balances. How much? Not important. It becomes important when you're asking me to give him a project. He needs a good contract. I said no. Dad exhaled sharply. You don't have to be so damn cold. That almost made me laugh. Cold. Yes. You have resources. You have connections. You have this place. He gestured towards Cedar Hollow. Trevor has a family depending on him. Hein doesn't have children. That's not what I mean. What do you mean? Hein has employees. So do I. Hein has responsibilities. So do I. You know what I'm saying? I did. I thought my life had extra space. Because I was unmarried, my money had no destination. Because I had no children, my time had no rightful owner. Because my business was stable, its resources could be redistributed. Dad lowered his voice. You've done well. It sounded almost painful for him to admit. So help your brother. No. His expression changed instantly. The warmth disappeared. You're going to regret treating people like this. I said no to a business contract. You said no to family. No. I shook my head. You just don't know the difference. Dinner began at 7. By then the family had transformed. Publicly anyway. Mom had moved my seat to the center of the main table. Aunt Colleen brought me wine. Uncle Ray asked about Northline. People who had ignored me at lunch wanted advice. Tessa arrived beside me, smiling as though she had never told me she understood why I was alone. You look nice. Thanks. She sat. Then leaned closer. I'm sorry about earlier. I looked at her. For which part? Her smile tightened. The Instagram thing. Not the other sentence. Interesting. I got excited. That seems to happen a lot today. She sighed. Can we not fight? We're not fighting. You're being weird again. I looked at her. She caught herself. Sorry. That one might have been real. Dinner started. Grilled chicken, corn, roasted vegetables, salad, bread, cherry pie waiting near the kitchen. Simple food. Exactly what I wanted. The conversation was anything but simple. Mom told relatives, Nora has always had such a strong work ethic. That was technically true. Then, Gary and I always encouraged her independence. I stopped eating. 3 hours earlier, my independence had been evidence that I was difficult. Now it was a parenting success. Trevor kept quiet. He barely looked at me. That made me uneasy. Tessa was unusually affectionate. She kept touching my arm, asking about Cedar Hollow, asking about weddings, asking whether October sunsets were pretty over the lake. Every question had a purpose. Then Dad stood. He lifted his glass. My stomach tightened immediately. Gary Bennett loved public announcements, birthdays, graduations, promotions, anything where he could stand while everyone else sat. He tapped the glass. Conversations faded. Dad smiled. What a day. People laughed. We came here to celebrate family. I looked at Trevor. We have a son building a company. Then Tessa, a daughter planning a beautiful marriage. Then finally me. And today we discovered another reason to be proud. Applause began. I stayed still. Dad smiled wider. Nora has always taken a different road. Different. Not successful. Different. She's independent. There it was. She works hard. And clearly she has built something impressive. More applause. I looked at him. For one foolish second, I wondered whether he was simply going to say something kind. Then he said, but success means very little if you cannot use it to strengthen the people you love. My entire body went cold. Dad lifted his glass. The Bennett family has always believed that when one of us wins, we all win. Trevor finally looked at me. I knew. That was the moment I understood. This had been planned. Not misunderstood. Not assumed. Planned. Dad continued. That's why I'm proud to announce that Nora has agreed to bring Bennett Premier renovations into the Cedar Hollow restoration project this fall. Applause exploded. Trevor gave a small embarrassed smile. I stared at him. I did not meet my eyes. Dad wasn't finished. And she's going even further. Tessa covered her mouth, already performing surprise. My mother smiled. They all knew. Nora has also offered Cedar Hollow to Tessa and Owen for their wedding weekend. Tessa gasped. People cheered. Owen turned toward her. His expression said, "What?" Dad raised his voice over the applause. And as her wedding gift, Nora will cover the venue food and lodging for the immediate family. Tessa threw both arms around me. Oh my God. I did not move. She whispered into my ear. Please don't ruin this. That was the moment. Not Dad's speech. Not the applause. Not Mom's smile. Those 4 words. Please don't ruin this. They knew. They all knew I had never agreed. This was not confusion. It was pressure. My father was counting on the same thing he had counted on my entire life. That I would rather hurt myself than embarrass the family. I gently removed Tessa's arms, then stood. The applause died. Dad's smile remained. His eyes didn't. They became hard. I looked around at the tables. Thank you, Dad. He relaxed slightly. That was an incredibly confident announcement. Silence. But there's one problem. Dad's jaw tightened. None of it is true. Nobody moved. I turned toward Trevor. I did not give Bennett Premier the Cedar Hollow renovation. His face flushed. Then Tessa. I did not give Cedar Hollow away as a wedding venue. Her mouth opened. And I did not agree to pay for anybody's wedding. A ripple moved through the tables. Dad put down his glass. Nora. I looked at him. You made the announcement. I was trying to create a solution for people who weren't entitled to one. Tessa stood. Are you serious? Yes. Her eyes filled immediately. You're going to do this in front of everyone. I almost smiled. You mean correct something said in front of everyone? Mom hissed. Nora, sit down. No. Her face changed. Do not humiliate your sister. I stared at her. You all just volunteered my money without asking me. We were going to discuss the details. When? Dad answered. Tomorrow. I laughed once. So tonight you announce yes. Tomorrow you ask me. Dad stepped toward me. Enough. No. His face went red. You have made your point. No, Dad. I haven't. My voice stayed calm. You keep saying family helps family. I agree. My mother blinked. So let's talk about what family means. Dad's expression changed. I knew something was coming. Before I could continue, Tessa snapped. Oh my God, Nora, stop acting like this is some huge betrayal. I looked at her. You posted my property as your wedding venue before asking. I deleted it. After I told you to. She threw up her hands. Fine. Trevor announced my renovation contract before asking. Trevor muttered. I deleted it too. I nodded. And now Dad announced both things anyway. Tessa laughed bitterly. You know what your problem is. There it was. The family had run out of explanations. Now came the attack. You have to control everything. I stared at her. You're angry because I want control over my own property and money. No. You're angry because nobody can do anything nice for you. That almost impressed me. You announced a free wedding I never offered, and somehow that is you doing something nice for me. She slammed her hand against the table. You know what I mean? Owen said quietly. Tessa. She ignored him. You've always been like this. Like what? Bitter. The word came easily. You hated that people liked me. No. You hated that Mom and Dad were proud of Trevor. No. You hated family pictures. That one stopped me. I looked at her. No. My voice became quieter. I hated being told to take them. Her face shifted, only for a second. Then Trevor stood. Jesus, Nora. I turned toward him. You're 34. And we're really going to sit here listening to you complain about childhood. No. I looked at Dad. We're going to talk about today. Trevor laughed. You bought one property, and suddenly you think you're better than everyone. I never said that. You don't have to. He stepped closer. You walk around like you won. Won what? Life. I stared at him. He continued. You have money. Great. You have a company. Great. Al bought a lodge. Congratulations. Then his voice sharpened. But none of that changes reality. What reality? His smile was ugly. You were still the plain one. A few relatives shifted, Dad said. Trevor. But it was weak. Too late. Trevor had found the old weapon. He wanted to use it. Tessa walked into rooms and people noticed her. He pointed at me. You walked into rooms and people asked if you worked there. Silence. You never had the social life she had. You never had the relationships. You don't have a husband. My chest tightened. You don't have kids. And there it was. The place he knew still hurt. I kept my face still. Trevor smiled slightly. You have no idea what it's like to have people actually depend on you. I looked at him. 70 employees depend on me. That's not family. Dad nodded. There it was. My work counted only when they wanted access to it. Tessa crossed her arms, then said the cruelest thing anyone said that night. You can buy Cedar Hollow. I looked at her. You can buy every house around this lake. She touched her engagement ring. But you can't buy someone wanting to come home to you. The words landed directly where she intended them. The table disappeared for a second. The lights, the relatives, the lake, everything. All I could hear was that sentence. Because there had been nights when I wondered exactly that. After my longest relationship ended, I had spent months wondering whether my family had been right. Whether I had built a company because building was easier than being loved. Whether my independence was strength or simply evidence that nobody had ever chosen me. Tessa had no idea how many times I had asked myself that. Or maybe she did. Maybe sisters always know. I looked at her. Then Trevor. Then Dad. And suddenly I couldn't breathe properly. I did not want them to see. So I did something I had done since I was 16. I left. Not running. Not crying. I simply said, "Excuse me," and walked into the lodge. Behind me, I heard Dad say, "Let her cool off." That nearly broke me more than Tessa's words. Let her cool off. As though I was throwing a tantrum. As though they had not just dismantled me in public because I said no. I walked past the lobby, past the kitchen, into the small laundry room used by housekeeping. I shut the door. Then I put both hands on the utility sink. They were shaking. I hated that. I hated how quickly 34 years disappeared. I was not the owner of Cedar Hollow, not the founder of Northline, not anybody's boss. I was 12 again, standing behind Tessa in a family picture, trying to make myself useful enough that maybe nobody would notice I wanted to be loved too. My eyes burned. I let myself cry, quietly, for maybe a minute, maybe two. Then the door opened a few inches. Claire's voice. Nora. I wiped my face. I'm fine. She waited. I laughed bitterly. You can say it. What? That I'm functional. I was going to say your family is terrible at dinner. That made me laugh through the tears. Claire stepped inside. She did not hug me. She knew me better than that. She stood beside the dryer. What did she say? I told her. Claire closed her eyes. That was cruel. I know. Do you believe her? That was the dangerous question. I looked at the sink. Sometimes. Claire nodded. No inspirational speech. No instant correction. Just, sometimes isn't always. I looked at her. She continued. And being afraid something is true doesn't make it true. Silence. Then she handed me a paper towel. You want me to cancel dinner? No. Throw somebody in the lake? Tempting. Your father. I laughed. Then the laugh disappeared. Because Dad was the center of it. He had always been. Trevor had spent his life trying to stay impressive enough for Dad. Tessa had spent hers learning how admiration became safety. Mom protected the system, but Dad built it. The successful child, the beautiful child, the useful child. 3 roles, 1 scoreboard. I washed my face. Then I looked at Claire. I need my folder. She understood immediately. You sure? Yes. Claire left. I stared at myself in the small mirror above the sink. My face was blotchy, eyes red, hair slightly messy. Nothing impressive, nothing powerful, just me. For the first time that night, that was enough. Claire returned with the leather folder I had left in the office. I held it. Inside was 1 printed email, 1 page. That was all I needed. 3 weeks before the reunion, a commercial lender in Columbus had emailed me. The message began, Ms. Bennett, before we prepare the final guarantor documents for Bennett Premier Renovations, we need to confirm several pieces of information provided on your behalf. I had read that sentence 6 times. I had never spoken to that lender, never agreed to guarantee Trevor's business debt, never given anyone permission to provide my income, business position, home address, or financial details. Yet all of it had been submitted. Someone had told the lender I had verbally agreed to back Trevor's financing. The paperwork was not final. Nothing had been signed. That detail mattered. There was no fake signature, no courtroom drama, no police waiting outside, just something more personal. My father and brother had decided I would say yes before asking me. Then they started the process anyway. When I called Dad, he admitted it. Trevor needed short-term financing. Dad believed the additional guarantee would get things moving. I asked why nobody called me. I said, because you would probably overthink it. I asked whether he had told the lender I agreed. I went quiet. Then, we assumed you would. I told the lender no. The application stopped. I froze access to anything else that might involve my company. Then I waited. Not because I wanted revenge, because the reunion was 3 weeks away, and I wanted to see whether my family would tell me the truth on their own. They didn't. Instead, they tried to give Trevor my biggest project, then tried to give Tessa my venue, then stood in front of 60 relatives and volunteered more of my money. I dried my face, picked up the folder, and went back outside. The moment I returned, conversation stopped. Dad was still standing. Trevor had sat down. Tessa looked furious. Mom looked relieved, like the difficult child had finally returned, so the family could finish disciplining her. Dad said, "Are you ready to stop this now?" I looked at him. No. His face darkened. I walked to the table, placed the folder beside my plate, then looked at my father. "You said something earlier." I stared. "You said Trevor has people depending on him." "Yes." "You said family protects family." "Yes." "You said my success means I have a responsibility to help." He lifted his chin. "I stand by that." I nodded. "Good." I opened the folder. Trevor went completely still. Dad's eyes dropped to the page. I knew what it was. Mom did too. Tessa didn't. Neither did most of the table. I pulled out the email, placed it in front of me, then looked at Dad. "Tell them." His jaw tightened. "Nora, tell everybody what you did 3 weeks ago." Silence. Dad lowered his voice. "This is private." I almost smiled. "There it is." "What?" "Everything is public when you're spending my money." I pointed toward the relatives. "But private when we're discussing how you tried to get it." Dad's cheeks turned red. Trevor said quietly, "Nora, don't." I looked at him. "Why?" His eyes dropped. That told everyone there was something worth hearing. Aunt Colleen leaned forward. "What happened?" Dad snapped. "Stay out of it." I looked around the table. 3 weeks ago, Trevor's company applied for additional financing. Trevor stared at his plate. About $185,000. Several people looked at him. The lender was told I had agreed to serve as additional guarantor. Tessa frowned. "What does that mean?" Owen answered before I could. "If Trevor couldn't repay, Nora could be responsible." Tessa's face changed. I continued. "The lender was given my home address, my position at Northline, my approximate income, information about my company." I looked at Dad, and they were told I had already agreed. Mom covered her mouth. Aunt Colleen whispered, "Gary." Dad stood. "She was never obligated to anything, because the lender contacted me before finalizing it." That's exactly my point. He spread his hands. "Nothing happened." I stared at him. "Nothing happened. No money was released. No final guarantee was signed. You stopped it." He almost sounded offended. "So what is the problem?" For a second, nobody moved. Then I understood something. I truly believed that. To him, violating my boundary did not count if he failed to benefit from it. "The problem," I said, "is that you told a lender I had agreed to something I never even knew existed." Dad scoffed. "We were going to ask." "When?" "Once the numbers were finalized," a cousin whispered. "Wow." Dad turned toward him. "This is family business." I looked at Dad. "You keep saying that like it gives you more rights." "It gives us responsibilities." "No." I shook my head. "It gives you an excuse." His face hardened. Trevor finally stood. I knew. Dad snapped his head toward him. Trevor looked at me. "I knew Dad had given them your information." Silence. Mom whispered. "Trevor," he continued, "I told myself he would talk to you. But you knew he hadn't." Trevor swallowed. "Yes." "Why?" I looked destroyed. "Because I needed the money." There it was. Not complicated. Not financial jargon. Not a criminal conspiracy. My brother needed something. My father had taught him my consent was optional when his need was large enough. Dad stepped between us verbally. I was trying to save his company. I looked at him. "And you decided I would save it." "Hi is your brother." "That isn't an answer." "Hi has employees." "So do I." "He has obligations." "So do I." "You have more room." There it was. The sentence I had been waiting for. What does that mean? Dad knew he had said too much. I looked away. "No." I stepped closer. "You said I have more room. What does that mean?" Dad exhaled. "You know exactly what I mean." "No." "Say it." "Nora." "Say it." His face went red. "You don't have children." The table went silent. "You don't have a husband." My chest tightened again. "You've done well. You have money. You have flexibility." He gestured toward Trevor. "Your brother has people depending on him." Then toward Tessa. "Your sister is starting a family." I looked at him. So my life is extra. That is not what I said. It's exactly what you said. No, my money is extra because I'm single. Nora, my weekends are extra because I don't have children. Stop twisting this. My business can spare work. My property can spare a wedding. My name can spare a loan application. I looked directly at him. And if I object, I'm selfish. Dad stared. Nobody moved. I turned toward Mom. You knew. Tears filled her eyes. Nora, you knew Dad gave them my information. Her silence answered. Tessa turned toward her. Mom whispered. We thought Nora would help. Tessa looked at Trevor, then at me. For the first time that evening, she looked horrified for someone other than herself. You didn't know? No. She looked at Dad. You told the bank, she said yes. Lender. His correction was automatic. Almost absurd. Tessa stared at him. That is not the point. Dad snapped. Don't you start. Then Tessa said something I never expected. She has every right to say no. Dad looked at her as if she had betrayed him. Trevor rubbed both hands over his face. I'm sorry. Dad turned. Stop apologizing. Trevor looked at him. What? You were under pressure. That doesn't make it okay. You did what you had to do. Trevor stared at him, then laughed. A terrible, exhausted laugh. That is exactly the problem. Dad's face tightened. Trevor continued. You keep saving me from admitting I failed. You haven't failed. Yes. Trevor's voice rose. I have. The whole table went silent. He looked around at the relatives Dad had bragged to all afternoon. My company is in trouble. Dad snapped. That's enough. No. Trevor wiped his forehead. I owe suppliers. He looked at Uncle Ray. I don't have 12 crews. Dad's jaw clenched. Trevor laughed. I have 5. A cousin stared. And I'm not having my biggest year. He swallowed. I'm trying to keep jobs moving by using money from the next one to finish the last one. Mom started crying. Dad said, stop. Trevor turned toward him. Why? Because you're embarrassed. Dad glared. Trevor continued. You tell everybody I'm doing twice the work I'm actually doing. I'm proud of you. No. Trevor shook his head. You're proud of the version of me you sell. That landed. Even Dad went quiet. Trevor looked at me. I let him use your name because I was scared. My throat tightened. I told myself it wasn't real unless you signed. I looked down. But that was garbage. Silence. I knew you hadn't agreed. He swallowed. And I let Dad move forward anyway. I did not forgive him. Not then. But for the first time, he was talking to me like an adult instead of performing superiority. I'm sorry, he said. I nodded once. I heard you. His face fell slightly. I'm not ready to forgive you tonight. He nodded. Okay. Dad scoffed. Oh, for God's sake. Everyone looked at him. This is ridiculous. His voice grew louder. Your brother makes one mistake and suddenly Nora gets to stand there like some moral authority. One mistake, I asked? Dad ignored me. He built a business. I employed people. I took risks. I stared. And when it got hard, you tried to put my name under it. Dad pointed at me. Because you could handle it. That was the purest version of our family system I had ever heard. Because you could handle it. I thought of every childhood moment, every bill, every lonely drive home, every family photograph, every time my parents had given more to someone else because Nora could handle less. I nodded slowly. That is what you have always done. Dad frowned. What? You punish the person who can survive being punished. His face changed. You help Trevor because he needs it. You help Tessa because she cries. You ignore me because I cope. Mom covered her mouth. And then you point at my ability to cope as proof I never needed anything. Silence, Dad said. You had everything you needed. That one hurt. I smiled without humor. No, I had everything I could provide myself. Aunt Colleen looked down. Mom cried quietly. Then Tessa suddenly asked, wait. Everyone looked at her. If Trevor needed almost 200,000, her face became pale. She looked at Mom. Where did the wedding money come from? Owen turned toward her. What? Mom froze. Dad said immediately. That has nothing to do with this. Tessa stared at her mother. You said you had savings. We do. How much? Tessa. How much of the wedding is actually paid from savings? Mom started crying harder. Dad glared at her. Denise. But the truth had already entered the room, Mom whispered. We used some of the home equity line. Owen's face changed. Tessa looked confused. What home equity line? Mom's shoulders shook. We borrowed against the house. Silence. How much? Dad snapped. Enough. Tessa stared. How much for the wedding? Mom whispered. Almost 60,000. Owen pushed his chair back. Tessa looked as though someone had slapped her. You borrowed $60,000 against the house, not just for the wedding. Mom looked at Trevor. That made it worse. Some of the money had gone to him too. Tessa started crying. You said Dad's bonus covered the venue. We wanted you to have what you wanted. I told you Brookstone was expensive. Mom's face changed. You also told me Owen's parents would think we couldn't afford it. Tessa froze. Owen looked at her. Tess, that isn't what I meant. Mom laughed bitterly through her tears. You cried when I suggested changing photographers. Mom, you said you couldn't be the girl who downgraded everything after your friends already knew the plans. Stop. You wanted the wedding. You told me we could afford it. And you wanted to believe me. Silence. Tessa sat down. Owen looked at her. Not angry. Worse. Disappointed. Dad slammed his palm onto the table. Enough. Everyone stopped. His chest heaved. This family is not going to destroy itself over money. I looked at him. We're not destroying it over money. His eyes moved to me. This started because you refused to help. There it was. Even now. The fire was my fault because I would not throw myself into it. I stared at him. No. Yes. You came here with some kind of chip on your shoulder. No. You humiliated Trevor. He announced a job that wasn't his. You humiliated Tessa. She announced a venue that wasn't hers. You dragged private matters in front of the family. You volunteered my money in front of the family. Dad's face turned dark red. You are impossible. I nodded. For you. He stared. Because you cannot make my decisions anymore. Dad stepped toward me. You think because you own this lodge you have power over everybody. No. I looked around at the tables. I finally understand that nobody here should have power over anybody. Silence. I'm not taking Trevor's company away from him. I'm not canceling Tessa's wedding. I'm not forcing Mom and Dad to sell their house. I looked at Dad. Those are consequences of choices I didn't make. He said nothing. I will not fund Bennett Premier. Trevor closed his eyes. I will not give Trevor the Cedar Hollow project. Dad's jaw tightened. I will not pay for Tessa's wedding. My sister cried silently. And I will not let anyone use my financial information again because you think my life has more room than yours. Dad's hands curled. If you walk away from this family now, don't expect us to be here when you need something. For years, that threat would have terrified me. That night, it sounded almost absurd. I looked at him. When were you there? I went still. When my apartment flooded. Nora. When I broke my wrist and couldn't drive. That was years ago. When I had emergency surgery and called Mom from the hospital. We came. 2 days later. Mom looked away. You were with Tessa. Tessa whispered. I didn't know. I know. I looked at Dad. When my first subcontractor nearly bankrupted me. Silence. When I opened my first office. No answer. When I opened my second. Nothing. You cannot threaten to remove support I already learned to live without. Dad stared at me. I could see anger. But beneath it was something else. Loss of control. For my entire life, he had been the person who defined reality. Trevor was successful because Dad said so. Tessa was special because Dad said so. I was difficult because Dad said so. Now the room had stopped accepting his definitions. That terrified him. He pointed toward the lodge. You would have nothing if we hadn't made you tough. I felt the old anger rise. Then something calmer replaced it. You don't get credit for my survival. Mom closed her eyes. Dad laughed bitterly. We pushed you. No, you overlooked me. That pushed me. He stared. There's a difference. Silence. I looked at all of them. I spent years wanting what Trevor and Tessa had. My brother looked up. I wanted Dad to look at something I built the way he looked at anything Trevor touched. Trevor's face changed. I wanted Mom to talk about me with the same excitement she used when Tessa bought a dress. Mom began crying again. I wanted to be in the picture. Tessa covered her mouth. But I don't want their places anymore. I looked at Dad. I don't want to be your new favorite because I finally became useful in a way you respect. My voice steadied. I'm done participating in a family where love has a scoreboard. Nobody spoke. Dad looked around. At his son, his wife, his daughter, his relatives. Nobody rushed to defend him. That had never happened before. He grabbed the back of his chair. Fine, Mom whispered. Gary. No. He picked up his jacket. Nora wanted her big moment. I shook my head. No. I looked at me. I wanted a family reunion. That hurt him. I saw it. He turned toward Trevor. We're leaving. Trevor stayed seated. Dad stared. Trevor. My brother looked up. I'm staying. Silence. You're coming with me. I'm 37. Don't do this. Trevor laughed bitterly. That's what I've been saying to myself for 4 years. Dad's face hardened. What is that supposed to mean? It means stop rescuing me. Dad blinked. I never asked you to. Yes, I did. Trevor stood. Every time something went wrong, I called you. And every time you found a way to make the problem disappear long enough for me not to change. Dad stared. That's called helping your son. No. Trevor shook his head. That was helping me stay exactly the same. Dad looked disgusted. Pathetic. Trevor flinched. I saw it. There was the whole childhood in one word. Successful son. Unless he failed. Then pathetic. Trevor took a breath. Maybe. But I'm still staying. Dad turned toward Mom. Denise. She looked down. Come on. Mom did not move. Denise. She finally looked at him. I'm tired, Gary. His face changed. Of what? She laughed once. A broken sound. Of keeping the picture straight. Nobody moved. Dad looked from her to us, then walked away. Alone. His truck left Cedar Hollow 15 minutes later. Dinner did not become happy after that. Nobody applauded. Nobody celebrated. There was no victory music. Real family explosions leave debris. People spoke quietly. Kids were taken toward the fire pit. Relatives cleared plates simply because doing something with their hands felt easier than making eye contact. Aunt Colleen disappeared for nearly an hour. Mom sat at the table staring at her wine. Trevor walked towards the dock alone. Tessa and Owen spoke in low voices near the barn. I went back into the lodge. This time I did not cry. I was too tired. At around 10, Trevor knocked on the small office door. Then I come in? I nodded. He stood awkwardly near the desk. I'm going to close Bennett Premier. I looked at him. Tonight. No, he rubbed his face. I have jobs to finish. Good. I need to call clients. Yes. Suppliers. Yes. He laughed weakly. You're not going to rescue me. No. He nodded. I know. Silence. Then, I think that might be the first honest help anybody has given me in years. I said nothing. Hunsat. I was drowning. I know. And I wanted Cedar Hollow because I thought one big job would make everything look okay. That doesn't fix a bad system. I know that now. I looked at me. I'm sorry about the loan. I nodded. And about what I said at dinner. Silence. I knew exactly where to hit you. Yes. I looked ashamed. I needed you smaller because I felt small. That was better than an excuse. Not enough for forgiveness. But better. I appreciate you saying it. He nodded. Are we ever going to be okay? I don't know. He accepted that. Fair. The next morning, Aunt Colleen found me near the boathouse. She did not hug me. That mattered. Nora. Hi. She looked uncomfortable. I owe you an apology. Yes. She blinked. Apparently, she expected me to rescue her from that too. I waited. What I said yesterday was cruel. Yes. I've been doing versions of that for years. Yes. Her eyes filled. I thought because you laughed it didn't hurt. I laughed because nobody defended me. She looked down. I'm sorry. Thank you. She hesitated. Then I hug you? No. Her face changed. Then she nodded. Okay. It was one of the smallest moments of the weekend, and one of the most important. Someone asked before taking closeness from me. I said no, and they survived. Tessa came to me before noon. Her ring was still on her finger, but she kept turning it inward. Owen and I are canceling Brookstone. I looked toward him. I was loading bags into the car. Are you canceling the wedding? No, she swallowed. Maybe postponing. That sounds sensible. She laughed without humor. I hate sensible. I know. She looked at Cedar Hollow. I won't ask for this place. Good. That surprised her. Then I softened. If you and Owen decide later that you want to talk about Cedar Hollow, you can ask. Her eyes filled. As a customer, as my sister. She stared. What does that mean? It means you ask. And I answer. A tear slipped down her cheek. That sounds fair. It is. She wiped her face, then said quietly, what I said last night? I looked at her. She swallowed. I wanted to hurt you. I know. I knew the marriage thing bothered you. My throat tightened. I'm not going to pretend I didn't. She nodded. I'm sorry. I said nothing. She looked scared. I don't expect you to forgive me. Good. A tiny smile appeared through her tears. Fair. Then she looked toward the lake. I always thought you hated me because I was pretty. I never hated you for being pretty. What did you hate me for? Using it to win. Her face fell. That's fair too. She took a breath. Mom taught me it was the one thing I was always supposed to be good at. That caught me, Tessa continued. When I gained weight in college, she bought me a gym membership. I looked at her. I didn't know. She told me I had too pretty a face to let myself go. I closed my eyes briefly. Of course. Tessa stared at the ground. I think I got addicted to being the child who made Mom proud. I understood that more than I wanted to. Understanding did not erase what she had done, but it changed the shape. I'm not ready to fix us today, I said. She nodded. Okay, that doesn't mean never. She looked at me. For the first time all weekend, she smiled without performing. Okay. The reunion ended quietly. Everyone checked out by early afternoon. Nobody was thrown out. Nobody was publicly banned. I did not stand on the porch enjoying their humiliation. That would have been another performance. I watched cars disappear down the gravel drive. Then I stood beside Claire. She looked at me. How do you feel? Tired. Good. I laughed. That's good. It means you're not numb. We stood there for a while. Then Claire said, You know the workshop idea? Yes. Let's build it. That became my answer to the entire weekend. Not revenge. Build something. Over the next 6 months, the North Barn at Cedar Hollow was renovated into the Cedar Hollow Workshop. Northline used it to train apprentices in drafting carpentry, estimating project coordination, and basic construction skills. We partnered with local community colleges, then career transition programs, then a foster youth organization. The first group was small, 24 students. One of them was a 16-year-old girl named Maya. Thick glasses, wild brown hair, quiet, always choosing the seat nearest the wall. The first time she used a circular saw, her hands shook. The instructor stood beside her. She made the cut. Perfect. Then she looked up. Her entire face changed. Not because anyone told her she was beautiful, because she had discovered she could do something she had been afraid of. I knew that expression. I had worn it once. Trevor shut down Bennett Premier 2 months after the reunion. There was no dramatic collapse. He finished the jobs he could, transferred others, sold equipment, worked out payment plans. Then he did the thing Dad considered most humiliating. He got a normal job. Project superintendent for a larger contractor. Salary, benefits, a boss. No company carrying his last name. 6 months later, he called me. You know what's amazing? What? I sleep. I laughed. Congratulations. My paycheck arrives every other Friday. Horrifying. If a supplier is late, I don't think my life is ending. That sounds unhealthy. He laughed, then grew quiet. Dad tells people I'm consulting. Of course he does. I correct him. That mattered more than any apology. Trevor had stopped helping Dad protect the family myth. Tessa and Owen stayed together. Barely. They postponed the wedding, went to counseling. Tessa took extra event planning work and began paying my parents back for part of the wedding expenses. 14 months later, they got married. 42 guests, a small church. Dinner at an Italian restaurant owned by Owen's uncle. No champagne wall, no floral ceiling, no 200-person guest list. Tessa wore a sample sale dress. Mom hated that. Tessa wore it anyway. I attended. Not because we had magically become best friends, because she asked. And I chose yes. During dinner, Tessa stood to make a toast. She looked at Owen, then at me. My whole life I thought being loved meant being admired. She swallowed. I was wrong. Then she said, My sister taught me that love without respect is just another form of hunger. I cried. She saw. This time she did not make a joke. Mom changed more slowly. For months after Cedar Hollow, we spoke carefully. Then one afternoon, she asked me to meet for coffee. We sat in a small cafe halfway between our houses. 20 minutes of weather, traffic, salon gossip. Then Mom wrapped both hands around her cup. I've been seeing a counselor. That surprised me. Trevor suggested it. That surprised me more. Mom laughed. I hated her. Promising. She asks terrible questions. Like, Mom looked down. Why I needed Tessa to be beautiful. My chest tightened. why I needed Trevor to be successful. Silence. And why I called you independent when what I really meant was that I didn't pay enough attention. I looked away. Mom cried quietly. I'm sorry, Nora. I looked back. She understood that vague apologies were no longer enough. I'm sorry I compared your face to your sister's. My eyes burned. I'm sorry I let Colleen make you the family joke. She wiped her cheek. I'm sorry I put you in the back of pictures. A broken laugh escaped me. That sounds stupid. No. Mom shook her head. It sounds small. Her voice cracked. But small things repeated for years become the room a child grows up in. That sentence broke something open inside me. I'm sorry we treated Trevor's plans like investments and yours like hobbies. I wiped my eyes. And I'm sorry I knew your father gave that lender your information. Silence. I told myself you would eventually say yes. She looked at me. That was wrong. I believed she understood. That did not mean everything became easy. She did not get unlimited access to my life. We did not suddenly talk every day. Forgiveness and access are not the same thing. We started slowly. That was enough. Dad did not. For almost a year, he barely spoke to me. When he did, he sent long messages about family unity, respect for parents, how hard he had worked, how ungrateful modern children were. He never asked about Cedar Hollow, never asked about Northline, never apologized for the lender application. Eventually, I stopped replying. That was painful, more painful than I expected. People talk about cutting emotional distance from toxic family as though it feels powerful every morning. Sometimes it feels like grief. You grieve the father you still wish would call, the Christmas that could have been easier, the apology that never comes, the version of childhood you know you cannot go back and repair. I allowed myself to grieve it. I did not turn grief into permission. 18 months after the reunion, a handwritten letter arrived. Dad's handwriting. I left it unopened on my kitchen counter for 4 days. Then I read it. Most of the first page irritated me. He wrote about pressure, providing for a family, his generation, wanting his children to succeed, explanations, context, all the things people use to circle an apology without entering it. Then near the bottom of the second page, I found 3 sentences. I used your name because I believed your success belonged partly to me. It did not. I was wrong. I stopped reading for a minute. Then, I told myself I was helping Trevor, but I was really teaching him that your consent mattered less than his need. And finally, I am sorry. No excuses. I have not fully repaired my relationship with Dad. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. That uncertainty no longer frightens me. For the first time, I do not feel obligated to decide quickly simply because he is uncomfortable waiting. That is another boundary. 2 years after the reunion, we held Thanksgiving at Cedar Hollow. Not 60 people, just a small group. Trevor, his girlfriend, Tessa and Owen, their baby daughter Lily, Mom, Claire, a few friends who had become family. Dad was not there. He had been invited. He said he wasn't ready. For once, I did not chase him. Dinner was simple: turkey, mashed potatoes, green beans, cherry pie because Claire claimed it was tradition now. Afterward, Mom pulled out her phone. Picture. Everyone groaned. Tessa laughed. Trevor picked up Lily. Mom started arranging us by instinct. Owen back row. Trevor beside him. Tessa come forward. Then she looked at me. Nora? She stopped. I knew what she was about to say. Stand in front. An apology hidden inside choreography. I smiled. No front. Mom blinked. I stepped beside Trevor. No back either. Tessa smiled. I waved everyone closer. Just squeeze in. So we did. Trevor stood on one side, Tessa on the other, Mom beside Claire. Friends mixed with relatives. Nobody ranked. Nobody placed according to beauty, success, age, importance. The timer on Mom's phone started blinking. 10, 9, 8. Tessa whispered. My hair looks terrible. I said, good. She elbowed me. Trevor laughed. The camera clicked. The photograph is framed in my office now. Lily is looking the wrong direction. Trevor's eyes are half closed. My hair is caught on Tessa's shoulder. Claire is laughing. Mum is crying. It is not a perfect picture. That is why I love it. I spent most of my life believing revenge would mean proving my family wrong, becoming successful enough, wealthy enough, respected enough, building something so big they would finally regret overlooking me. I was wrong. The real revenge was building a life where their opinion no longer had a vote. Cedar Hollow was never the victory. The money was never the victory. Northline was not even the victory. The victory was being offered the same old choice: sacrifice yourself or be called selfish. And finally answering, no. No, you cannot volunteer my money. No, you cannot use my name because you think I will eventually agree. No, you cannot insult me and call it humor. No, you cannot decide my unmarried life matters less. No, you cannot turn my strength into an excuse to give me less. No, you cannot make me smaller so somebody else feels successful. And no, I do not have to become cruel to prove that you were cruel to me. That last one may be the most important, because dignity is not winning the family scoreboard. Dignity is refusing to play. Legacy is not a house, not a company, not a wedding, not a respected last name. Legacy is the voice people carry inside themselves because of how you treated them. Trevor spent years hearing, "You cannot fail." Tessa heard, "You must be beautiful." I heard, "You can handle it alone." We are still learning to replace those voices. Maybe that is what healing actually is. Not pretending the past did not happen. Not giving everyone unlimited forgiveness. Not forcing reconciliation because people share blood. Just refusing to pass the same damage forward. And as for being the plain one, I finally understand something my family did not. Ugly was never a face. Ugly was making a child earn affection. Ugly was turning siblings into competitors. Ugly was using love as leverage. Ugly was laughing when someone was humiliated because defending them would make dinner uncomfortable. Respect is beautiful. Accountability is beautiful. A person who can hear no without punishing you is beautiful. And a life that finally belongs to you. That might be the most beautiful thing of all. So let me ask you this. If your family used your name to rescue the child they always favored, then called you selfish when you refused, would you forgive them? Or would you walk away for good?